10 budget gardening hacks with DIY stylish garden decor ideas. When I imagine the process of shaping a garden, I see it much like designing a building. The materials may be modest, the budget may be limited, but the vision must always be ambitious. A garden is not defined by the cost of its elements, but by the coherence of its story. Every corner can carry meaning, every object can be transformed, and every small intervention can elevate the overall atmosphere. To me, creating an outdoor sanctuary is a dialogue between nature and human intention, a conversation where creativity takes precedence over expense. The first gesture in this conversation often begins with containers. In many projects, I avoid recommending newly purchased pots because they often lack character. Instead, I seek objects that have already lived a life: wooden crates that once carried fruit, metal buckets that held water, or even simple tin cans. These become vessels of renewal. With paint, they gain fresh vibrancy. With mosaic tiles, they become miniature sculptures. Their imperfections, scratches, dents, faded surfaces turn into strengths, adding authenticity and narrative to the garden. What might have been discarded becomes a statement of resourceful design. From there, I always encourage beginning from the origin of growth itself: seeds. In architecture, foundations matter more than facades, and in gardening, seeds represent that foundation. Choosing seeds rather than mature plants does more than save money. It allows the gardener to participate in the act of creation from its earliest stage. Watching the first leaves push through soil is akin to witnessing the scaffolding of a building rise. It connects you to the process, not just the result. Seeds also offer freedom of selection. They unlock access to varieties that nurseries rarely stock, providing a richer palette for design. When flowers bloom or vegetables ripen, you feel not just pride, but authorship because you were there from the beginning. Yet gardens are not only horizontal planes, they are opportunities to rise vertically. Space, like budget, is often limited. That is where vertical design reveals its power. Old pallets stacked against a wall, shoe organizers hanging from a fence, or trellises crafted from simple wood can become canvases of greenery. This vertical approach creates a tapestry effect, a living wall that draws the eye upward and enlarges the sense of space. Herbs, strawberries, and climbing flowers find a natural home here. In the language of architecture, is like transforming a blank facade into an elevation full of windows. Each pocket of green a window into life. The vertical garden is economical, efficient, and dramatically stylish. Movement through the garden must also be considered. Just as hallways and corridors guide people through buildings, pathways structure the journey outdoors. Many believe this requires costly stone or marble, but I see beauty in humble alternatives. Gravel provides texture and sound underfoot. Reclaimed bricks recall the memory of past constructions. Even slices of wood from fallen trees become stepping stones that blend with the landscape. The pattern matters as much as the material, whether arranged in curves that soften the space or in straight lines that provide clarity. These pathways not only save money, but invite intimacy, turning each walk into a sensory experience. Beneath the surface, nourishment is essential. Just as no building can stand without strong foundations, no garden thrives without healthy soil. Chemical fertilizers often come with a high cost, both financially and environmentally. Composting, however, is a return to balance. Kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and autumn leaves become an alchemy of life when combined with time and patience. Compost is not waste, but renewal. I often think of it as the recycling of memory. Yesterday's meal becomes tomorrow's blossoms. By composting, the garden itself participates in a cycle of sustainability, reinforcing the principle that beauty arises from continuity, not consumption. Decoration, too, does not need to emerge from stores or catalogues. It should arise from imagination. I have seen old bottles turned into shimmering borders, catching light like fragments of stained glass. Mason jars, when transformed into lanterns, illuminate nights with a glow more intimate than any purchased lamp. Discarded wood can be shaped into signs, their carved letters weathering over time, adding to the story of the garden. Each of these details speaks of personality, of the designer's hand. They remind us that style is not bought but crafted, that a true garden bears the fingerprints of its maker. As the sun sets, light becomes architecture in itself. Without it, the garden disappears into shadow. With it, the garden gains a second life. Solar-powered lamps are a marvel of affordability and sustainability, requiring no wires, no electricity bills, only the gift of daylight. Strings of lights woven through branches create constellations within reach. Lanterns along pathways establish rhythm, guiding footsteps like a sequence of architectural columns. In these moments, the garden transcends its role as a daytime retreat and becomes a stage for evening gatherings, intimate conversations, or quiet reflection. Light shapes emotion, and emotion shapes memory. Furniture, often considered a costly addition, also deserves reimagination. Before suggesting new pieces, I look to what already exists. Old benches and chairs may appear tired, but a coat of weather-resistant paint revives them, bringing freshness without cost. Even objects no longer suited to their original purpose, like a broken ladder, can be reborn as plant stands. This philosophy reflects one of my core beliefs as a designer. Every object has latent potential waiting for transformation. By respecting what we already own, we create continuity between past and present, between what was and what can be. Finally, the plants themselves must be chosen with wisdom. Native species adapt naturally to the climate, requiring less water, less care, and less expense. They belong to the land, and by planting them, we honor the landscape's identity. When paired with perennials which return year after year, they provide stability and endurance, reducing the need for constant replanting. This approach mirrors sustainable architecture, designing buildings that endure through climate, context, and time. A garden rooted in native and perennial plants becomes not just a temporary display but a lasting environment, an ecosystem that sustains itself while delighting the eye. As I reflect on these principles, I see them not merely as tips, but as a philosophy of design. Gardens are laboratories of imagination, spaces where thrift meets artistry, where scarcity sharpens invention. They remind us that beauty is not the result of expense, but of intention. A simple garden designed with care becomes a sanctuary as meaningful as the grandest estate. And when we stand within it, surrounded by the fruits of creativity and the evidence of renewal, we realize that elegance, charm, and tranquility are never measured in money, but in vision, effort, and love. When I continue to unfold the philosophy of designing a garden on a modest budget, I approach it as I would the second stage of architectural planning, establishing rhythm, layering textures, and creating focal points that shape experience. The essence of design is not only in the structure, but in the atmosphere it generates. In a garden, this atmosphere emerges from a dialogue between function and delight, between necessity and beauty. Each choice, when approached with intention, contributes to a symphony of space that feels both curated and organic, refined yet deeply personal. One of the most striking elements in this second phase of design is the pathway of discovery, the subtle invitation that encourages exploration. A garden without a sense of journey risks feeling static, while one with carefully orchestrated transitions feels alive. To achieve this on a budget, I often turn to simple materials that hold stories within them. Gravel, for instance, is not merely an inexpensive solution. It is a texture underfoot, a gentle crunch that punctuates every step like rhythm in a piece of music. Reclaimed bricks carry a patina of history, their imperfections forming a mosaic of time. Wooden slices, when laid in thoughtful succession, evoke warmth and connect the garden to the cycles of the forest. What others may dismiss as discarded remnants, I recognize as opportunities to root the present in continuity with the past. Composting is another essential element, and in this stage I see it not only as a technical solution, but as an ethical statement. When designing structures, I often stress the importance of sustainable materials. In gardens, composting is the parallel practice. Kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and fallen leaves are the garden's raw material for renewal. Instead of viewing these as refuse, I view them as resources. The act of composting teaches patience and respect for natural processes. It becomes a ritual. Each peel, each leaf added to the pile is a gesture of trust in time. When the compost is returned to the soil, it is not simply fertilizer, it is the garden's memory transformed into nourishment. This closed loop mirrors sustainable cycles in architecture, where waste becomes material and the future is built on the reintegration of the past. Decoration, in my vision, emerges naturally from what is available. Too often people assume that beauty must be purchased, but true artistry lies in reinvention. Consider the potential of old glass bottles, which can be arranged into borders that catch sunlight like stained glass windows embedded in earth. Their colors shift with the passing hours, turning ordinary borders into dynamic installations of light. Mason jars, modest and common, become lanterns when fitted with simple candles or solar lights, casting warm, flickering illumination across evening gatherings. Even discarded wood, which might seem destined for the fire, can be reimagined into rustic signs or sculptural accents. These details are not mere decorations, they are expressions of individuality, gestures that transform a garden into a portrait of its creator's ingenuity. Lighting, for me, is as crucial in a garden as it is in a building. Architecture without light is lifeless. Gardens without light are invisible. Light sculpts space, creates depth, and evokes emotion. On a limited budget, solar-powered lights are an elegant solution, drawing energy from the sun by day and returning it as warmth at night. Pathways lined with stake lights become illuminated corridors, while string lights woven through branches create a celestial canopy, turning the garden into a theatre of stars. Lanterns hung at varying heights establish rhythm, drawing the eye across the space. This layering of light is what transforms an outdoor room from functional to magical, offering both intimacy and spectacle. It is the kind of intervention that requires little expense but yields immeasurable value in ambience. Furniture introduces yet another layer of function and form. Here I emphasize renewal rather than replacement. Old chairs, benches and tables, when seen through the lens of potential, become canvases for reinvention. A coat of weather-resistant paint breathes life into them, granting both protection and charm. Even broken ladders, seemingly useless, can be reinterpreted as plant stands, tiered displays that elevate greenery and add dimension. In this act of repurposing, we not only save money, but also honor the craftsmanship of the past. Just as an architect might restore rather than demolish a historical structure, a gardener can reimagine furniture as integral components of design. The garden then becomes an archive of continuity, where old objects gain new meaning and where utility coexists with aesthetic delight. Plants themselves must be chosen with careful thought, for they are the living architecture of the garden. I advocate strongly for the use of native species, which are naturally adapted to local conditions and require less maintenance, less water, and less intervention. They thrive where they belong, bringing resilience and authenticity. In combination with perennials, which return year after year, they provide stability and rhythm, ensuring that the garden does not demand constant reinvestment. This choice reflects a principle I hold deeply as an architect, that design must respond to context. Just as buildings are shaped by climate, culture, and geography, gardens should be informed by the land they inhabit. In doing so, we achieve harmony between design and environment. But no garden, however practical, is complete without details of delight, those subtle interventions that engage the senses and invite pause. Handmade wind chimes, crafted from shells, bamboo, or recycled metal, introduce soundscapes that shift with the breeze. Painted stones become accents of colour, hidden gems scattered among the greenery. Birdhouses, whether constructed from scrap wood or decorated with vibrant paint, invite life to share the space, turning the garden into a dialogue between human creativity and natural presence. These gestures are not costly, yet they elevate atmosphere, creating a sense of intimacy and charm that purchased items cannot replicate. They remind us that design is not solely about form and function, it is about feeling, about crafting moments of joy. At this point in the design process, the garden has evolved into more than a collection of plants and objects. It has become a carefully orchestrated environment where every choice, whether container, pathway, or decoration, serves a purpose beyond utility. Each element contributes to a holistic vision, where beauty arises from intention and creativity transforms limitation into opportunity. This is the essence of architectural thinking applied to the garden: to see beyond surfaces, to recognize the latent potential in humble materials, and to shape a space that resonates with both practicality and poetry. Ultimately, the second stage of garden creation is about layering functions, textures, light, and meaning. It is about orchestrating the ordinary into the extraordinary, weaving together repurposed objects, natural cycles, and human imagination into a unified whole. When completed with care, the garden at this stage is no longer simply affordable. It is elevated, personalized, and profound. It becomes a testament to the idea that design, when guided by creativity rather than expense, has the power to turn even the simplest of spaces into sanctuaries of style, comfort, and soul. As the design journey moves into its final stage, I see the garden not just as an arrangement of materials and plants, but as a complete environment, a composition where every detail contributes to a larger narrative. This stage is where refinement occurs, where the harmony between structure, nature, and human presence reaches its peak. Just as in architecture, the final layer of design determines not only how the space is perceived, but how it is lived. A garden created on a budget, if guided by vision, can achieve the same sense of elegance and intentionality as one built with endless resources. It is here, in the final articulation, that style and spirit become inseparable. The first aspect I emphasize is coherence. A garden, like a building, must tell a story. The recycled planters, the seed-grown flowers, the vertical greenery, the pathways of reclaimed material, all of these elements, though varied in origin, must connect under a unifying principle. This coherence comes from rhythm and repetition. A repeated color scheme across painted containers, the consistent presence of certain textures such as wood or stone, or the echo of vertical lines in both trellises and lighting, all these design gestures tie the space together. Coherence does not require money. It requires discipline, the restraint to curate, and the wisdom to weave disparate pieces into a seamless whole. Without coherence, the garden risks becoming cluttered. With it, the garden becomes a symphony. Equally important in this final stage is proportion. In architecture, proportion governs the relationship between walls, openings, and volumes. In gardens, it governs the balance between open space and planted density, between tall structures and low-lying accents, between light and shadow. A single large planter can dominate a corner and anchor the space, while clusters of smaller decorations can soften the edges. A vertical garden must be balanced with ground-level textures to avoid overwhelming the eye. Even lighting should respect proportion, with brighter zones near gathering areas and softer glows along pathways. By calibrating these relationships, we create balance, and balance creates comfort. A visitor should never feel lost or overpowered in a garden. They should feel invited, guided, and at ease. The next refinement comes through layering sensory experiences. A well-designed garden appeals not only to the eye, but to sound, touch, and scent. Wind chimes introduce a delicate soundscape, shifting with the breeze. Plants such as lavender, mint, or jasmine release fragrance that changes the air itself, turning every breath into an experience of design. Surfaces such as smooth stones, rough bark, or soft moss add tactile variety, encouraging touch and grounding the visitor in the physical reality of the place. This layering transforms the garden from a visual tableau into an immersive atmosphere, a total environment that engages body and mind alike. It is in this multi-sensory orchestration that the garden transcends utility and becomes art. In this final articulation, sustainability must remain a guiding force. A garden that exhausts resources cannot endure. Choosing native plants ensures long-term vitality. Integrating compost maintains soil health. Solar lights reduce environmental cost while enhancing ambience. Even water can be managed creatively. Rain barrels, simple irrigation systems, or the strategic placement of drought-tolerant species reduce dependence on external supply. By embedding sustainability into every decision, we ensure that the garden is not only affordable to build, but affordable to maintain, preserving both beauty and responsibility. A A sustainable garden is an ethical design, one that honors the land as much as it serves its inhabitants. Yet beyond coherence, proportion, sensory richness, and sustainability, there lies one final dimension: personalization. A garden becomes truly alive when it reflects the hand and spirit of its creator. This is where handmade details become essential. Painted stones, each carrying a message or pattern, can be scattered through pathways as small moments of surprise. Birdhouses, crafted from wood or metal, invite life to share the space, turning the garden into a dialogue between human imagination and natural presence. Even seating, when personalized with cushions or fabrics that reflect personal taste, adds intimacy. These details transform the garden from a generic environment into a living self-portrait where every corner reflects the identity of its designer. In the final analysis, what emerges is a philosophy of abundance through limitation. By choosing seeds over plants, recycled containers over new pots, pathways of reclaimed material over expensive stone, and solar light over wired systems, we learn to value creativity above consumption. The elegance of the garden does not come from its cost, but from its thoughtfulness. Every repurposed object carries a story, every design decision carries intention, and every handmade decoration carries authenticity. This is the power of design as I understand it, to transform scarcity into opportunity, to turn constraint into style, and to reveal beauty in the ordinary. When the garden is complete, it stands as more than a space, it becomes an experience. In the morning, sunlight touches the vertical greenery, casting long shadows across gravel paths. In the afternoon, scents of herbs and flowers rise, mingling with the warmth of the soil. In the evening, solar lights awaken, guiding footsteps along illuminated corridors, while lanterns shimmer among branches like distant stars. The garden changes with the hours, just as a building changes with the sun. And in each transformation, it offers a different mood, a different gift. Visitors may walk its paths, sit upon its benches, or simply gaze from a distance, but in every case they feel its coherence, its balance, its intimacy. And so, the journey of creating a budget-friendly garden concludes where it began, with vision. To design with little money is not a limitation, but an invitation to deeper creativity. By recycling, repurposing, and reimagining, we not only save resources, but also honor them. By choosing seeds, compost, and native plants, we not only save money, but also build resilience. By crafting decorations, lighting, and furniture with our own hands, we not only personalize the space, but also infuse it with love. The result is a sanctuary that does not simply look stylish, but feels authentic. A retreat that speaks not of wealth, but of care, intention, and imagination. Ultimately, what defines a garden's success is not its scale or its expense, but its ability to evoke joy, peace, and belonging. A true garden is not purchased, it is authored. It is a living manuscript written in soil, light, and form, shaped by the hands and hearts of its creator. And when we step into such a space, we recognize immediately that beauty is not a product of money, but of vision, that elegance is not bought, but crafted, and that the most meaningful gardens are those where creativity blossoms as abundantly as the plants themselves.